and welcome to Signal Shift with me, Raki and Sue. Last week, we delved into the future of investing. It was such a fun experience and highlighted the possibilities of how we will be able to invest our money in the years to come. This week, we want to talk about the very nature of money itself. I exclusively use my Apple Pay on my phone. Just someone who enjoys not having a handbag or not having too much stuff in me, right? So I try to keep it really minimal, just keep my phone on me. And this is so funny, but I've noticed this whenever I'm in the store with somebody who's like 65 plus, they are always so entertained when I pull out my phone. And this technology's been there for a while, but for whatever reason in my life, the older people just always like, oh wow, do you always pay with your phone? And it's really cute. But it just gets me thinking about money and how we're going to use it and where we're going to use it and what it's going to mean and look like. And oh my God, there's so many questions here. So yeah, are we even going to need money? Are we still going to call it money? Those are exactly the debates that are happening, not just, I think, in this conversation, but around the world in the last 2 years, and many more leaders coming together to discuss exactly this. Our world systems are in a phase of destruction and reconstruction, and it poses a tremendous opportunity to reevaluate the age-old systems and whether they work for us or not, and to design better systems that suit the needs of the times now. And I think money falls straight up in this realm. So, Sue, what did you find to share with us with regards to the future of money today?
Thanks, Rocky. Yeah, it is nice when you don't have to go out with a huge handbag and have cash and all the things. So it's definitely something, but every once in a while when you find a place that's cash only, you're like, what? No, I don't have any. Anyway, so the topic is the future of money. And that made me think, well, who has the future of money? Right now, it's Gen Z and Gen Alpha. And I thought, well, long gone are the days of when you put your coins in your piggy bank growing up and you see what that looks like, and parents actually teaching their kids about financial literacy. If anything, kids are now much more financially savvy and looking for ways to make money starting at an early age. So I saw a couple of reports that were really interesting. So MasterCard issued a survey, and this was specifically for the Asia Pacific region, but people are learning to manage money as young as 7 years old. 94% of Gen Alpha in that region already has access to a financial account. 58% hold digital wallets. 49% hold investment accounts. And what about their parents? Well, nearly half of them said their kids are actually the ones that introduced them to digital financial tools. So tables are totally turned, and it makes sense. Like, they're a total digital first generation. So the future of money really lies with them. So what are they doing, right? They're actually earning money earlier and more and just differently. I'm sure babysitting gigs still exist, things like that, but 42% of teens are earning money digitally and 38% are doing it more traditionally. But the high earners, there was an article in Fortune that said every US high school has at least one kid making over $10,000 a year. And interestingly, most of them who are earning the higher echelons of money are usually influencers. Brands are reaching out to them, things like that. But interestingly, a lot of teens are selling things online. So the number one thing is that they're selling clothes, footwear, and apparel. Then they're streaming for video games. They're actually earning in-game currency, winning video game tournament prizes, things like that. So it was just interesting to me that the future of money still lies in like this digital ether of things, that you can keep currency in a game, for instance, that you value. It might never come out of the game. You know what I mean? And yeah, it's just that the future of money is just through all these different digital products. So to me, I was thinking this is another example of where the educational tables are turned, and it would really be helpful to have younger mentees from Gen Alpha and Gen Z of like, what are the financial tools that you're learning from right now? If anything, it's encouraging to know that more young people have much more of a handle, hopefully, on financial literacy, because there has been this phase where money in, money out on your phone, it doesn't really like translate well into the real life. So there's more consumption then there has to be. And so, this is a way of learning more about savings and investment. So super, super interesting. But that's where the future of money is.
You touched on so much stuff that I'm like, ting, ting, ting. Wait, what? I have a question. I mean, one of the things that came up for me was, how old were you when you got your first bank account?
I think like not till at least the end of high school, maybe college. What about you?
Yeah, similar. Like I was 16, 17. Yeah. And at the time, kid of the year or so. And, it was this young girl who won this year. And it spoke about everything you're kind of speaking about, Sue, which she kind of started her own, startup, invented something, did something. But it's really around helping prevent scammers from scamming elderly people and helping elderly people, an educational site for them. It speaks to exactly all the things you're speaking of, which is young people teaching older people, right? And we seeing this generational shift. And I think digital products, just a different way, starting to earn money so much sooner, really having their heads wrapped around it so much sooner. You mentioned MasterCard. I'll jump into, I guess, which is my signal. I wanted to talk about the whole concept of stablecoin. And people might have heard about it. You might have heard of it in passing, and I'm not certain everybody knows what it means. I certainly didn't for the longest time, but I think it could be a really good bridge to get us to digital currency. And I think that's why I wanted to speak about it today, and an exciting thing happening in that space that I think we're going to hear news about very, very soon. But I wanted to recap with just, reminding us and myself really, okay, what is crypto again? And what does it mean? And what is stablecoin? And how does it work? But again, just a reminder that, cryptocurrency now is simply just digital currency in which the transaction is verified and recorded, by a decentralized system, right? Not a centralized kind of entity or body. And it uses this concept of cryptography, which is just creating codes, right? Codes that nobody can break. Like all the things that money should become, right? It should move towards that way, as everything tends to move digital. Now, traditional currency like the US dollar, of course, is government issued money, and it's dependent on the government to manage that supply and demand. So stablecoin is in essence a cryptocurrency that it meets all the other criteria, but its value is pegged to another asset. So in essence, it could literally be pegged to the US dollar. So it could still be dependent on the value of the US dollar or something else, gold, whatever it may be, but it still operates the way any other cryptocurrency would. But that's why it's called a stable coin. It's meant to bring that stability. And that's what's interesting about it is, can it be the bridge between where we are now to fully getting us to being digital, right? And really moving away from money systems? Because as much as we've spoken about it and crypto's been so big and so wild, part of what the problem is with crypto, right? Being so wild and so erratic, we've seen unbelievable value and many millionaires and billionaires made out of things like Bitcoin, right? But as a society, we haven't transitioned to this technology that all sits there that makes sense. And I think stablecoin, I think it might be the bridge to that. Stablecoin itself you can have four types, right? Which is one is fiat backed, in essence, like US dollar, traditional a currency like that, commodity, gold. It can even be crypto backed as long as those sort of the crypto that it backs, those companies are also decentralized and they hold a lot more in their reserves. So again, a lot more stability in those cryptocurrencies. They can also be algorithm. So this is literally crypto that's then managed by computer codes, which is kind of wild. But again, they would circulate more or deflate or increase the price, right? Based on what's happening with the algorithm. So still very safe, as much like, oh, it's algorithm, it's set up with certain rules and boundaries. So still all, much more safer ways than kind of the wild world of like, ooh, cryptocurrency that can go as high and big and as erratic as we've seen some cycles be, which I think makes everyone nervous. But I think the big signal and why I'm thinking, ooh, are we moving this way? Is this coming really soon? There are rumors right now. There's still rumors, it's not confirmed, but you can read up about this. But MasterCard is aiming to acquire a crypto stablecoin infrastructure company that deals with this, does this. It's called Zero Hash. And so I've been checking the news every day. This is like last 4 days ago. There's still lots of, news stories out about this. I just saw earlier today This company obtained another type of license, which is another indicator that this deal might go through and might happen. There were rumors with MasterCard of another company a while back, so I think everyone's dealing with this with caution, but it would be a 1.5 to 2 billion acquisition. If a company like MasterCard acquires this, we really, again, I think are moving much more closer to stablecoin becoming a reality for all of us in our money lives. But what else what other signals did you have?
Gosh, I feel like there's so many others I could share. It's, obviously hot topic right now. And to be fair, this one might have belonged in the future of investing. So I'm not sure. But again, just thinking about the future of money, how you grow it, I was thinking about what the next step will be for investment funds. And I saw not too long ago, I think in the summer, Stanford Business School published a paper. They said they had developed, along with Boston College, an AI model called the Terminator. It's called the Terminator because the question was, could they actually, using public information only, could they outperform previous portfolio analysts and their stock picks? Could they pick like an ultimate stock picker? And they called it Terminator, I guess, because of where this is going, right? So they reviewed over 3,300 different actively managed and diversified funds every 3 months. And they put in some parameters where they could adjust it, again, using only public available information. Well, this AI model beat out 93% of those managers. And not only by that, by 600% as an average. And, the original question was like, are investors losing out on potential because they aren't analyzing publicly available information? But this really answered a whole different question. They actually thought it was a mistake that they kept going back saying these results can't be true. But when looking at it, they said, no, this is real. And so it begs the question of, in the future with your money, who are you going to trust to manage this? And to be fair, one of the things the professor said was, this is in comparison to previous funds where they didn't have AI as a model. Your gains are not going to be that much more edged out in the future because so many more funds will have AI. And so there was an article also in Bloomberg that said there was a hedge fund in Sydney where I think it was called Minotaur. They used AI to beat the market, at least in this past 6 months, and it consistently outperformed. And so this is a fund that has, I think they had no analysts on their team, and they worked alongside one other firm that had maybe like one or two, just like a very, very narrowly staffed team. And so this was really begging the question about the role of junior analysts on Wall Street in the future, if everything is going to go to AI, and who you're really going to trust to manage your money in the future. So just thought it was really, really interesting. Again, maybe this is more future of investing, but again, who manages your money is just a really important question.
So I think, this thing, it screams out at me in what the message is from AI, right? AI taking away those jobs. It's advisory roles, which is coaches, it's financial analysts, it's lawyers. People turn to AI models for all kinds of questions now, right? It is the prime advisory for people from their businesses to their personal lives, to the astrology charts. What you're saying is 100% spot on.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see again how much more caught up the younger generations are and how ready they are for a lot of this to happen. But again, then the question is who misses out, right? And so when you were talking about even being in line to see more elderly people looking at you paying with your watch or your phone, right? It's just like, what's next? And I got to find the data, but there was a survey, right, about who's missing out on crypto. Again, what's it going to take to kind of normalize it? And really, the people who are most comfortable with it are males, right, age 18 to 49. But it's especially older people and women who are really skeptical of this and just under no circumstances will invest in crypto, which I think possibly an issue going forward. To your point, the more digital we're going to become. So yeah, how to make this more inclusive and who's getting to define the terms of like how people are using money. Yeah, the one thing I read, and I think this was from a few years ago, is JP Morgan puts out this annual magazine called Payments Unbound. It's a partnership with Wired Consulting, where they put out these kind of provocative ideas about the future of money and payments, really. And they had a really interesting piece on space. The more we go to the moon and likely will try to colonize Mars, right? All of these things. What will happen to payments? Because right now, all the things we're talking about is possible because we're so wired and things take just a fraction of a second to process. But when you're an interplanetary system, it's not going to work that way, at least for the beginning. And so they were posing really interesting questions about using something intergovernmental, right? Because they have a treaty where not one government can kind of own anything on planets, right? So what does that look like? And is that an area for crypto or some kind of democratized currency? Or do you go back to bartering? Because oxygen will be so precious, right? There will be food that will be so precious. Like, are those kind of the systems of currency that we're going to go back to in a certain way? So I just thought that was another really, really interesting thought experiment, maybe for not my generation, but future generations for sure, who are exploring what possibilities exist out there and how the heck are you going to get anything paid for out on Mars?
Yeah, I love that too. I mean, I think we're gonna see bartering in so many different places, right? Even people who maybe are scared to do the digital world and want to choose a different system. So interesting. I saw, I think it was CNN, a clip of a lady who, I think it was in the last week, and I'm sure it's gone pretty big, who spoke about not being able to find a job. She's 41. She's been at it for I don't know how long and has now come to that point of peace of what can and can't be. And she's going to live at kind of like a Buddhist retreat sort of place where she exchanges, her work and her effort to live there and have food. And I mean, that's barter. I was reading about another community. I think it's somewhere in India, similar thing. Like people will go, there's no money. There's no concept of money there. They don't talk about it. It's not a real thing in that community. So I think we'll see it on space. I think we'll see some of it on Earth as people are choosing different ways of living because money, it's tied to values, right? In a certain sense. And so it links back to what's my value system. And as we know, there's a lot of that that's changing and shuffling for people. So yeah, really, really. I mean, we've spoken about this before in other episodes, and so fascinating. Digital currency and robo advisors on one hand, and literally a society that is going to live in communities and barter, on the other. So fascinating times. So thank you so much. This was great. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. And do you have any cool information on what's happening in the future of money, or what are your new money habits that you've adopted in the last few years, and what excites you about what's coming? Let us know in the comments. Thank you so much for being here, and we will catch you again next week. Bye for now.